Today, we're going to cover the different versions of the carnivore diet. You could take these in linear order from purest to more flexible. That's going to be dependent on who you are, what your goals are, what you're trying to do, autoimmune issues, gut health, etc. But I'm going to give you a way to think about these and the different variables that are pretty well understood. These are open for interpretation because there is no standard unifying body that is going to define what a carnivore diet is. It's very much open to interpretation. I have my versions. You have other people in this space, whether it's Paul Saladino, whether it's Sean Baker. They all have different opinions on these different variables. So I'm going to paint a picture for you that it's an easy way to think about this so then you can then throttle the different foods or maybe move up or down a level between these different diets to find out what works perfect for you. By giving you some loose definition of the different styles of carnivore, you're going to be armed with all the information you need to decide where you want to start and where maybe you want to end up. So without further ado, let's get to the different versions of the carnivore diet. First up is the pure carnivore diet. This is going to be animals plus water. Seafood and things that were living are going to fall under the purest form of the carnivore diet. This is also where I recommend most people start if they're trying to do some kind of elimination diet. You don't want to throw in any other things from the plant kingdom because you can run into problems and not be able to decipher what is actually affecting you and what isn't. So going to this kind of base pure carnivore diet is the best first step to really figure out how certain foods affect you. Later on, as you're doing this for 30, maybe 60 days, you start adding in foods here and there and then listening to how your body responds. All animals, all seafood, and then water. That is the purest baseline of the carnivore diet. I do want to make a caveat here though that if you are doing the purest form of the carnivore diet, for the bulk of your calories, you're going to want to aim for ruminant, healthy animals, if it's from the land, and fatty seafood, if it's from the sea. Because these are the most ancestrally appropriate foods, you wouldn't want to do a carnivore diet where you're eating basically chicken and pork. In my opinion, that wouldn't be a carnivore diet at all. It's just not the same nutrient profile, and those foods weren't even available to our ancestors because they've been domesticated for the past 10,000 or so years. That's why ruminant animals are the closest approximation to what our ancestors would have eaten when they basically hunted the megafauna to extinction all over the world. Big land animals with lots of fatty cuts, red, deep nutrition that comes from eating grass. Those were the ideal foods for our ancestors, and those should be the ideal foods for us today. The next version of carnivore is what I'm going to call carnivore plus. This is going to include raw dairy. It's everything in the first group, whole animals, if it was alive, you can eat it, plus raw dairy, whether that's sheep, goats, milk, buffalo. Each one of those different dairy products and the different animals they come from all affect your biology in a different way. So to learn more about that, check out my video on carnivore and dairy up here to get an idea of maybe what foods you want to try on this version of carnivore or experiment here and there. Again, keep in mind that you're better off going with the pure carnivore diet in the beginning and then adding in dairy later so you can really understand how it affects your body. The third version of carnivore is what I call the spiced carnivore. Again, for simplicity, I'm just trying to define these things so that you have an easy way to think about them. This version of carnivore would actually be the pure carnivore plus certain spices, maybe coffee, tea, and then certain of the common cooking spices. Each one of those having different variables. Black pepper might affect you more than something like cardamom. You got to test and experiment and look more in depth into each of these ingredients. But most importantly, if you find that you're still having some inflammation or other issues, pay attention to those extra things, whether it's coffee or tea, and some of the tannins and potential toxins that are in those foods might still be affecting you. And so if you do run into that, after doing this for a while, you would then want to remove those, give yourself 30, 60 days, and then potentially add them back in. The flexible carnivore diet. This is where I think most people are going to end up if they're coming from a mixed herbivore eating approach, because most people, unless they have severe autoimmune issues and a very, very important reason why they would want to eliminate all plants, most are going to want to include plants mostly because they enjoy them and they just want a little bit of flexibility. Don't get dogmatic with this. That's perfectly fine. The key is with all of this, when you do a carnivore diet, you're doing it to figure out what foods affect you, because the animal kingdom, for the most part, is not going to affect you unless you have a very specific allergy to something, but I've never really heard of people having allergies to certain animals. Maybe shellfish would be an example, but for the most part, the foods that attack the human organism are found in the plant kingdom, whether that's grains, nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables, etc. Eliminating those in the beginning, figuring that out, then dialing them back in, certain foods are going to be less toxic and they're going to attack your biology less than others. And there could even be a case to be made for sometimes they can actually have a hormetic effect where it's kind of a positive stressor. I don't know if I buy that, to be honest, but I also don't buy the fact that having a little bit of veg here and there, or having certain fruits, or like some avocado, or olives, or things like that, I don't buy that they're going to just kill you either. In fact, I think some of those could probably have net benefit, especially in the case of a fruit, olive, or avocado for the monounsaturated fat. Fruit is one of those things that, for the most part, it's just going to kind of lead to fat gain. Like, it's not really doing you any favors. It doesn't really have much nutrition. If it keeps you from eating junk food, then yeah, include fruit in your diet. But the flexible carnivore diet is going to be a good amount of protein because you're still getting the base of your calories from animals, and then you're gonna have a good amount of fat in there, and then you're gonna have a very small amount of carbs that you might have from the various foods that I talked about. And each food is gonna affect you differently. Certain foods are gonna be safer than others, like I mentioned, avocado and olives versus something like berries, versus even more along the spectrum, something like tomatoes or cucumbers. As you go further along that spectrum and you get into the nightshades and then even in certain greens, that's where you get a lot more of those anti-nutrients that might not be doing you any favor. So it's very important that you kind of start these slowly, introduce them a little bit at a time, and then really build a solid routine based on what your body tells you. Now more than ever, if you're watching this in March 21st, 2020, there's a few reasons why you might want to think about doing step 1 carnivore, which is pure carnivore, as an elimination. This is going to give you some immune benefit. It's going to give you a better understanding of the foods and how they affect you, which will have a further long-term effects on your health and your immune system. I'll just kind of leave it at, I'd recommend starting with the baseline carnivore, or maybe if you have access to it, the spiced carnivore plus dairy. That's probably something between pure and the spiced carnivore dairy versions of the diet would probably be the best place to be right now.
And if you're really gangster, just go for the pure carnivore and see how you do.
These are a few of the main buckets of carnivore that I've observed that people are doing out there and getting results with. Certain people with autoimmune issues are obviously doing the pure play. Someone like Michaela Peterson, who was on the podcast, she actually has a version she calls the Lion Diet, which is nothing but beef and salt and water. Now, she has a very severe autoimmune issue that is the reason she's doing that. And maybe if you have some issues like that, like Crohn's or anything like that, and you really want to dial it in and figure out what's going on, that might be a good option. And then you can add in certain seafood, and then you can add in certain other animals and see how your body responds. But within one of these frameworks, you have the natural human diet. And if you look to our evolutionary past, you'll see that pretty universally, every hunter-gatherer ate some version of this diet. Some of them might have eaten more plants or tubers than animals, for example, but a lot of times that was a result of their geography, like in the case of the Catawbans, which lived on an island, and they just had less access to meats. And that's why those people ate that way. How far back their lineage goes, it's hard to say. But the reality is a lot of the hunter-gatherers that have more plants and fruits and different things in their diet are definitely ones that we've observed in the past 10,000 years, since we've been primarily an agrarian species where we get most of our nutrition from farming and domestication. Going beyond that to the true pure nomadic hunter-gatherers that wandered around the wild and lived off of the land, you're going to see that the bulk of calories and the bulk of nutrition came from animal products. And I'll be doing more videos on the ancestral implications of the carnivore diet and why it is the foundational natural human diet. And where people get caught up is trying to debate the quantities, but really animals are at the base of every human diet ever observed because that is who we are today. It's part of our evolutionary past. And that's all I'll say on that matter. I will save it for another day. So I hope you're going to be safe out there. I hope you're going to be focusing on your health and your nutrition, eating real foods and cooking at home. No better way to do that than get a nice big grass-fed fatty steak and cook it up in a pan using this recipe here. And then below you'll find some of my favorite beef from Alder Spring Ranch, grass-fed, organic, help support the show. I'm really trying to promote them lately because of what they're doing. I love their story. I love the fact that they're sustainable, they're regenerative, and they're a perfect model for showing all of the world's cattle producers how you can do this, where you can make money, where you can regenerate the land, and where you can actually improve the environment using animals. And a lot of the dogma around the environmental aspect of raising cattle is very out of context because animals Ruminants specifically are an integral piece of the ecosystem that was nature before any Americans got over here, or Europeans got over here, or Native Americans got over here and basically pillaged America. Before that was the case, our soils were lush and rich, full of nutrients and minerals, and there was hordes and hordes of bison, buffalo, etc. There is a way, there's a symbiotic way where we can eat animals and they can be part of the natural ecosystem that Mother Nature figured out through millions of years of evolution that works, that's sustainable, and that can actually improve soil health for the long run so that humans can actually be here and survive for generations to come, rather than strip mining the planet of nutrients, which is what we're doing, which is what growing these mass monocrops is doing, which is what that 100% plant-based diet is doing. All it's doing, it is removing nutrients from soil and from the earth and then feeding it to humans and not replenishing it the way it should. So you can find links to that as well as all my other favorite products below to help you on your health journey. And I really appreciate you watching this. Like, subscribe, do all those things, and I will see you in the next one. Hey, Colin here. Thanks for watching that video. I got a free PDF for you, The 7 Principles of Living Wild. Short and sweet, not long, not gonna be a novel you have to read or anything, just a simple reference of the things that make you a healthy human. So click on the button below, get that right now, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.